Hey, Tony Guys is here. Now, I seen this, um, what was it? A study. Well, I don't know if you would call it a study, but it was a report, and what they were saying is that right now more single women own homes than single men. I think it was like of the homes owned by singles. It was like 58% is owned by women and 42% owned by men, or something like that. And that it used to be like 40 something percent to 36%. And it was talking about how more single women are buying homes, and the comments was negative. That was sad to see, you know. It was a lot of comments, and the comments was like, oh, guys was saying, yeah, they got homes because we gave it to them. It's our home. Other people talking about, oh, it's their home because of divorce. And I have a lot of single clients who have homes, who have bought their home. And I get it for, my clients who are single in their 50s. It's like, you've been working, you put in the work, you're in your 50s, you might as well own a home. Like you would expect, if you meet a man and he's 45 plus, he's going to own a home too, maybe. But for single men and women who are in your 20s and possibly even in your 30s, now after you cross 35, that's a little different. But single men and women under 35, you should think twice before you buy a home. And I'm going to tell you why. The first thing is, if you plan to get married, a home is much more permanent, and it's a much greater deterrent to a potential spouse. And the reason why I say that is because in one part of my business where I'm coaching, I've coached men and women who get upset that the person that they've met and that they're trying to build with has their house already, and it's set in stone. Like a woman got mad, a woman could get mad because the man already has the house and she wanted to have a say so in picking the house. And yes, it's very easy to say, well, you could just sell the house. But that's not always the case because the market changes all the time. So you could get stuck on a house. I have clients who are trying to sell their house and their house is not selling. It's not moving. Like they're getting little, feedback, little offers, but it's really a lot of times just realtors playing tricks, trying to see if they'll let them, list the house or take it over and sell it in their network so they can make, the commission or whatever, but it doesn't move the house. So you could meet somebody, and then as it's easy to say, well, you can rent it out. And that's not always the case either, because rent typically is double what the mortgage costs. So if the mortgage is 2,000, rent is 4,000, it's not a lot of people that can afford $4,000 rent for a basic house. And then you can mark it up a little bit, from 2,000, 2,500 or 3,000, but now you increasing your risk if they tear it up, they do something. And then when you get renters, you could end up losing a lot of money because they can destroy the house. Like they ruin the carpet. Yeah, you got a security deposit, but that ain't gonna cover nothing because the security deposit is typically 1 month's rent. So if they ruin the carpet, if they ruin your three, four, five walls, if they, running messing up the heater, messing up this or that, got the AC too low all the time, AC freeze out, like you have to, as the owner, you got to come drop 7,500 for a new AC. If something go wrong with your roof, you got to drop that 12K to 40K for a new roof, or even just fixing the leak. The leak, they gonna hit you for 4,000, 8,000. And I own a home, so I know all these expenses. And then don't let the home have a pool, because that's always something always going wrong with the pool. And so you really should think about this, because, and you got to get to the root of it. A lot of times the reason why you want the home is to feel accomplished. You want to feel like you have a piece of the American pie, that you are living the American dream. But the thing about the American dream is it wasn't created to be your dream. The American dream is the dream of America. But the American dream is oftentimes your nightmare. And so every time I'm with a client and they are under 35 and they've bought a house, a lot, the main thing that I hear all the time is, I didn't want to keep paying rent. I didn't want to keep paying rent. But if you planning to be married within 3 years, 5 years, then you have to do that math. And the way you do that math is you look at what's the cost of your rent and you multiply it by 12. Then if you know for sure, you don't know for sure, but you have all the faith in the world, you're going to meet your spouse and you're going to get married within 3 years. Now it's multiply by 12 and then multiply that number by 3. Sit with that number. See how you feel about that number. And but then also think you have some benefits with that that's offsetting that cost. So yes, you may be, let's say you paying $2K a month. That's 24,000 times 3 years. You got 60,000 plus 12, you got 72,000. But guess what? You don't have to fix the roof. You don't have to fix the AC. You don't have to remodel anything. You renting. Another cost that you have, that you saving, is when the lease is up every year, you can move. You can move to a new part of town. You paying $400 for movers to load your stuff up and take it to a new place. You can move to a new part of town and experience a new place. You can move to a new city. You get that option every year of if you want to stay where you at. If where you at is dead, you ain't meeting nobody, it's a real slow area, boom, move to a little more of a popping area. So you got to take that in consideration. Also, you have to look at, when you buy a house, you got to look at the mortgage. So I was talking to a client last night. She watched a lot of videos, so she probably gonna see this. And we did this exercise to where we look at the mortgage cost, multiply it by 12, and then how many years is the mortgage? It's a 30-year mortgage. Now multiply it by 30 years. So what she paid for the house, by the time she's done paying the 30-year mortgage, she will have paid 3 times that cost. So essentially, think about if you bought your house for 300,000, but based on your mortgage payment times 30 years, you're gonna pay 900,000. If you own a home right now, do the math on it. Now, if you got your home a long time ago, your number is gonna be a lot better because the interest rates were lower. But if you bought your house within the last year or two, do the math on your mortgage times the amount of years you have left, or no, times the amount of years your mortgage is, and then see that number. And now you're gonna see this number, and so let's say this number is $1 million that you're gonna pay for this house, but you could be married and getting ready to up and move and then building a dream house with your spouse within 5 years. So where you could have paid 80,000 and had no extra expenses as far as repairs, evictions, and all of that, if you're trying to rent it out or you're trying to do Airbnb, instead of all the other expenses that come with owning a home, you could have paid 80,000 to 100,000 over the 4 or 5 years versus paying 1 million. And so now that's $900,000 that you saved, that you didn't commit to, that you didn't tie up. So what you have to understand is there are different things when you look at a cost. A cost isn't just the dollar amount. You have to look at the freedom cost of renting. You have to look at the maintenance and appliance cost, the freedom from that when you're renting, the ability to just, what I mean, freedom cost is up and move. You have to look at the cost of, if you got to break your lease, it's 2 months. It's 2 months rent. Whereas if you immediately got to sell a house, you have no control over that. If you immediately need to break a lease, boom, 2 months rent. If you managing your money and you got savings, you out of there. Like, let's say something happened to your parent gets sick. Now, and you got to move back home. Your parent live in another state, and you got to move there and take care of your parent because they too elderly to move to you. So now, if you rent a house, you leaving your house to get cobwebs. You leaving your house unattended. Your neighbors know you gone. It might not, your neighbor's not gonna rob you, but your neighbor boyfriend, your neighbor cousin, your neighbor whoever, they come over for the cookout. Yeah, my neighbor over there, she got this house, and now she got this house in Georgia. We here in Georgia, and then, but her mom living in Illinois or Massachusetts or Texas, so she back there. What's that, auntie? Your neighbor gone? Oh, really? What she do? What she do for a living? Okay. Single woman. She probably got flat screens and everything in there, don't her? Oh, yeah. She got what in there? She be wearing Rolexes? Oh, man. I ain't know that, auntie. Next thing you know, boom, your house robbed. Your house robbed. Insurance gonna be like, nah, you lying. Insurance finna take forever to pay you. They ain't gonna give you money. Then you let somebody rent it out. Anybody who done did real estate. I got a real estate development company and a real estate investment company. One thing about the rent is your tenant don't always have the money. Another thing about the rent, about when you own property and you rent it out, people will destroy your stuff. They'll destroy your property and they'll run off on the plug because it's gonna cost you money trying to get a judgment, trying to take them to court, trying to do this, trying to do that, and you're gonna be like, you know what? I'm throwing good money after bad. Let me just chalk it up. Nobody talk about that ugly side of real estate, of owning a home and renting it out. Then you get somebody in your home, they stop paying the rent, and now they squatting. Now they squatting. Now it's certain rules, like the lady in Beverly Hills, or she's somewhere in California. She goes, she rent this house, she pay for a month, and then she pull up. She know the laws because she like do real estate laws, some type of law. She know the laws. She pull up this code to where this house costs like 20K or 30,000 a month. It's owned by like a surgeon, and it's worth millions and millions, 20 million, 30 million, something crazy. I seen it online, and the lady have this code. She found this code that say he can't evict her if the house was not built up to code or specific to code, or if it's certain updates or certain things that have to be done, he can't evict her. So the lady been squatting in the man house for over a year now. She came in, paid a month or two worth of rent, and been squatting in the man house. Like, I have another colleague, somebody came in and knew all of the laws, knew how much it cost to do an eviction, to do all of that. The rent was 1,600 on this townhome. The man squatted in the lady house. She couldn't get him out of there. It took her like 6 months to a year to get the man evicted. It's not that easy. So when you buying a home, you have to think about, it's not as easy as just saying, I rent this out, because that might become your worst nightmare. It's not as easy as saying, when I'm ready to sell, I'll sell. It's not that easy because it's a lot of property for sale. Why you think Zillow is in business? Zillow in business because it's millions and millions and millions of houses for sale that cannot move, that cannot sell. Everybody want to talk about the house that got listed and was gone in a week, but ain't nobody talk about all them houses that been sitting there for 6 months, 8 months, a year, and can't sell. So think about it. And the reason what kind of changed my mind, because I was the same way, but I've been married since I was 23. But the reason why we bought is because, for one, we married. We rented until I was 31. And when we bought a house at 31, but again, I'm married. I've been married since 23. We was renting the whole time. The reason why we started wanting to buy a house, my wife wanted to buy a house, is because she had this fear of like getting in a house and you renting the house and you get comfortable and then the owner says we want to sell. And that's what happened to us. Like the owner started kind of hinting at they wanted to sell, and so they were sending somebody over, and we was renting a house in a gated exclusive neighborhood with security guards 24 hours a day and rovers that ride around. And our house was like on a little man-made lake, and 3 bed 2 bath, and it was me and my wife and our first son. And then I think Tayden was there. He lived there for about a year, and then we bought. And but that house, we actually moved out before it was ever sold, and I think our rent was like 1,600 a month, 1,600 a month. And then so I'm like, oh, okay, we're gonna buy a house. So we bought a house mortgage payment because of the house we bought was 3,500 a month. 3,500 a month. And so, like, if you get a mortgage, we did a certain, we special deal. And so I'm like, man, so if you do a mortgage on this, you're paying 3,500 a month, and then you're paying all the interest, so you're gonna pay crazy amount. And you got to fix the roof. You got to mow the lawn, take care of the lawn. When you rent, a lot of times the lawn is included. Our lawn was included in our rent. $50 a month was going to the lawn. So I ain't have to mow the lawn ever, not once. Now, buy the house, I got to add $200 onto, if I get a mortgage, $200 a month, get the lawn mowed. I'm busy. I'm trying to make money. I'm not going to be out there sweating. And so, to each their own. But because that hour it take me to mow the lawn's big, that's $2,500 I could have made if I'm doing what I do. And so here I am, got to add that. Boom. Now, when you buy a house, no house is perfect unless you build it from the ground up. But even when you build it, you still gonna have stuff going wrong because the builders always make mistakes. So stuff got to be redone. So if you buy a house that's already standing, now you got to go in and do remodels. So we come in, I think we probably spent 80,000 to 100,000 just remodeling stuff, getting it to where my wife wanted it. And we cut it short. It was more that she wanted to do, but the money ran out. And so I'm like, man, my goodness. But then she's showing me houses of like other people who they waited till they was like 40 to buy their dream house. And this ain't our dream house, but it's a nice house. It was like a dream when we bought it. But I was 31 years old. My wife was 29. She could have been 28. She 2.5 years younger than me. And so she probably, she could have been 28 right then. And so we was young in this neighborhood, and we bought the most expensive house on the block. And it's a corner lot. And our house was $150,000 to $200,000 more than any other house on the block. And the other people on the block, mind you, is all 45 to 80. And we coming in here 28 and 31. And so it looked crazy because even the people looking at us like, man, this is a lot of house for y'all kids. Like y'all is babies. We in here, your house $200K more than my house, and I'm twice your age. So even that, it was like the timeline of other races was a little different when it comes to buying a house. But a lot of times people want to just jump out there. Now, I'm going to tell you, psychologically, a woman getting with a man who has a house is totally different than a man getting with a woman who has a house. And that's just the unfortunate truth. Yes, it should not be that way, but that's how it is. If a man meets a woman who got a house, she could say, I'll rent it out, I'll sell it. But what that man is going to say 9 out of 10 times is going to say, well, you weren't really planning to be with somebody. You weren't really planning to meet a husband Because why would you do something that's such a big choice and so permanent if you were planning truly in your heart planning to meet a man? Like, why would you do something so permanent? Because now if I come into this now as a man and as a provider, let's say you get pregnant and let's say you can't work, now I have to assume your mortgage. I got to take care of your mortgage. Whereas if you had an apartment, I could just pay 2 months rent and break the lease and you can move in to my apartment or into my house. But if I'm going to take you on as a man, I can't just look at it like, men don't look at it like that's you and that's your money and that's on you. If a man is a good man and he wants to be a husband, he going to look at everything this woman have, all her bills, and he's going to assume that in the event she cannot work, all of her bills become his bills. And there's no way you really could talk and explain around that. And it's an unfortunate truth. But you got to realize people, men and women today, already looking at relationships like business deals. People are already preaching that a marriage is a business. So for as many people that's preaching that, there's millions of people that believe that. And you can't get around that because it's the society we live in, and you're not going to be able to explain it away and say, oh, well, you listen to this person say marriage is a business, but you need to listen to Tony Gaskins because he say marriage is not a business. And it should be about love and not about a business deal. And it was like, bump Tony Gaskins. I ain't trying to listen to that. He don't know what he's talking about. He'll simp pandering to women. So this a business deal. You done bought this house. If something happened, you get pregnant and you can't take care of this $2,000, $3,000, $1,500 mortgage, this lawn care, this AC, this roof, I got to pay for that because that's we finna be one. And if we rent it out and it get destroyed, if we try to sell it and it can't sell, again, this affecting us and our credit. And so now at that point, the man got to truly, truly love you, believe that you the one for him. And oftentimes it's just not that concrete because spouses, when you look at men and women and the people that you meet, most people could be interchanged. It's not that, it's rarely do we meet people that's just so far light years ahead of every other person that we meeting. It's rarely does that happen. Most of the time we meet people and it's like, you're a cool person, you're a great person, I could love you, I could fall in love with you, but it's not like the world will end if you walked away. And that's the state of relationships today. And look at your relationship history, and it'll prove that to be true, that nobody's having a heart attack when they meet you. And when y'all fall apart, nobody's taking their life. Nobody is curling up in a fetal position and staying there for the next year. They gone about their business. And so you have to think about this to every single man and woman who haven't bought a house yet. Really think about, what are you really doing it for? And if your only reason is to have a quote unquote asset, a house is not an asset, because it takes a rare market for your house to gain equity. And then when your house has equity, all equity is potential debt. Because if you go get a home equity loan, you just re-entered the debt cycle. And now you're at more risk of losing your house if something happens and you lose your income, or if your income goes down and you can't afford this home equity loan or this refinance that you just did. And now you started all over. So it's not actually an asset because it doesn't make you any money because you're living in it. And then if someone else lives in it, you still are going to make money for a season, but something is going to happen that eats the profits that you've made, like replacing your roof and your AC and your sprinkler system and fixing the holes in the walls from the kids and having to repaint the place and then having to do the flooring all over again. If you've ever done flooring throughout a house, even you put tile down, Just the tile costs $5,000, $7,000, $10,000, depending on the size of the house. And then if you got to have somebody put it down, you paying now about that again. So I redid certain areas in my house with the tile, and I think it was probably, and I got a cheap deal. I paid 7,500. But then when I just did it up to my office, I just 800 square feet. I paid about 7,000 or something like that, something crazy, 5,000, 7,000. But flooring costs. You're gonna have to pull up. You're gonna have to pull it up and redo it with somebody living in there. So you gotta sit down and, like the Bible say, count the cost. Count the cost, because you own nothing. So you could pay off your house, but guess what? When you pay off your house, you still owe property taxes for the rest of your life. So never can you come to a point to say, all I have to afford is lights and water, and lights, water, and food. Never do you come to that point, because you also gonna have to be able to afford the roof for when it start leaking. You also gonna have to be able to afford the AC. You also gonna have to be able to afford your property taxes. So, and property taxes, you know, if you got a mortgage, then they'll put it in your mortgage. But when your mortgage is done, now you got to pay them property taxes. And yeah, they got homestead exemption and stuff like that. And, you know, if you qualify, and then they have, you know, you could do payment plans for payment. So you pay it one lump sum payment. But that right there is why some elderly people, you'll see it in the news. Now that we talking about it, you'll recognize it next time you see it, where they talking about this 90-year-old African American lady is about to lose her home because she can't afford to pay her property taxes, because the plot of land that her house is on, her house been paid for 30 years, and she's been able to take care of the property taxes. But now her Social Security done got drastically cut. Her child had a illness, and she had to spend a lot of money to the doctors, and now she can't afford to pay her property taxes, and she's about to lose her house. And they putting her on the news with the hopes that the community will come together and everybody will pitch into her GoFundMe to take care of her property taxes and catch her up for the last 3 years. Because after them 3 years, that's when it really start to get serious, and it go to moving. And now that tax deed and all that getting sold, and she could potentially lose her house. And so, and guess what? Me being a homeowner and not having a mortgage through a bank, I had to pay my property taxes on my own. And when I first moved into the home, 31, I didn't know what property taxes was. I ain't understand it. Again, you got to count the cost. You come from certain places. Me nor my wife thought about it. And yeah, we got the bill, but we didn't understand it. And then one day, I get a call from my mama, and she was like, no, I got a letter. It happened twice. I got a letter, and it was like something like an auction or something coming up like this. And me and my wife, we go to the link, we look up, we owe $36,000 in property taxes. And one of the years was like 13,000. So we sent a check for 13,000, thinking like, okay, if we pay that third year back, then it'll give us some time, because they take it to the next level after 3 years. We sent the check in for 13K. They sent it back. It was a money order. They sent it back and say, you passed the point of paying partially. You got to pay the whole 36K. We had to go to the bank, my wife went to the bank and got a, what you call it, cashier's check for 36,000 and some change, and sent it in. And we literally, something in my spirit, when that happened, something in my spirit was like, check into their property tax thing. Like, check into their property tax. And I went to the site, and that's how it happened. I didn't get a letter. It literally was like just in my spirit. And we had about 5 days or something like that before the house was about to go up for auction, like the tax deed or something, to where somebody was essentially would own my house for just paying the back taxes. But then I talked to my dad about it. He said if they do get it, you still have a chance to give them the money, but you got to pay it with a little bit of interest, but they don't just like kick you out your house right away. And so that was a lesson. Guess what? If you come from nothing, you come from low income, you come from no financial literacy, you could buy a house and end up in that type of situation. And so I talk to people all the time who got a house and don't even know about all the inner workings and haven't even thought about, is this an asset or a liability? Haven't even thought about instantly having to move, haven't even thought about taking the cost of the mortgage and then multiplying it by the 30 years and looking at that number and feeling that number. Had never done that. And that, when I didn't know what interest was when I bought a car. I didn't know what interest was, or how to calculate it. But now, before I buy anything that I'm about to finance, like a car or anything, I take the cost, because the interest rate, we just look at it and it's like a number. You see, okay, such and such, 8% interest, 5% interest, 22% interest. You just look at it like a number. But if you take that monthly payment and you multiply it by the length of that loan, now that number hit different. Now you like, oh Lord, oh Lord. Now you look at it differently. And that's what you got to do. And so the real estate market, everybody who is in finance and real estate, except for realtors trying to hold on for dear life, and they trying to tell you that the market ain't nothing gonna happen to the market. The people outside of realtors who study finance, they keep saying we about to have a housing crash like never before. I've heard financial experts say this might be worse than the Great Depression. It's all kind of stuff being said. It's all kind of stuff being said. I don't know what's true. But if you own a house and you do them numbers and you see you upside down, you might want to try your little last ditch effort to try to sell that thing before your house is worth half of what you paid for it. You might want to try that last ditch effort. Just put it on the market just to see, and put it at a sweet price too. That some rich bank might come in and buy it. Some rich person from California, New York, if that ain't where you live at, might buy it. And the thing of being uprooted if you rent, the thing of that is about to be extinct, because banks are buying up billions of dollars worth of property for the sole purpose of renting it to people. It's banks that want to own the whole world. They don't want you to own a home no more, and they just want to make money off the rent. So it's coming to a point to where if you want to rent, you're gonna be able to rent as long as you want to rent. And the bank's gonna have, yes, that's their plan, but they still gonna have to sell houses, because banks, they make money off borrowed money. So if the people are hurting, the bank's gonna be hurting. Meaning, if all the stuff they done loaned out in mortgages and credit cards and car loans and home equity loans and all of that, if we go through a recession, the bank is the first one to take the hit because people not paying the bills, and all the people getting is just bad credit for it. But credit could be fixed. All that could be taken. They gonna end the credit score stuff one day, and so all that, the bureaus getting sued, credit bureaus getting sued, all that happening. So people don't care about bad credit no more, because there's so many credit repair people that can get anything deleted and removed. People don't care about bad credit no more. So the bank gonna be over leveraged because of their greed. And this all biblical. So you're gonna see the love of money, root of all evil. And so listen to me now and think about this thing, and check your motives and check your heart, and make sure you ain't just doing something just because it sound good, look good, or because you want to look like a boss, or look like you're successful, or look like you got the American dream. Really sit down and make sure the numbers make sense for you. Now, the numbers might make sense for you because you don't know when you're going to get married, if you're going to get married, if you want to get married. And so you just want to be stable. You want to have you somewhere, and you got a deal that you couldn't pass up. Okay, cool. That ain't your case. But that ain't everybody's case. Hey, it's Tony Gasson. God bless you. We'll talk soon.